Yes, we finally had him in the House. We have him here. He is State Senator Michael Doherty. He is a member of the Judiciary and the Education Committee. Good to see you, Senator.
Good to be here, Steve.
You are one of the most outspoken, interesting, compelling members of the legislature. You are not just someone who calls himself conservative, but you border on somewhat libertarian.
Absolutely.
Describe that.
Well, I think libertarian believes in small government, believes in the Constitution, and the vision of our founding fathers that the government should not be doing everything, that it should be constrained by the Constitution. And it drives me crazy when I hear elected officials say, democracy, democracy, democracy. We don't have a democracy. We have a republic.
That's right.
And a constitutional republic is much different than a democracy.
Steve Adubato here with a senator who happens to be a Republican, leaning libertarian, Michael Doherty. Let me ask you, believe in the Constitution. You're one of the first people, in fact, I think you were the first person to support President Trump, of note, in the state of New Jersey. Do you believe the president believes in the Constitution in the way you believe in the Constitution? And if so, make the case.
Yeah, I think he does support the Constitution.
Including separation of powers?
Support the Constitution of the United States. For one thing, I think, let's go back to why Donald Trump was elected. I think the reason he was elected is that Americans haven't had a pay raise since 1970. The bankers in 2008, instead of being sent to jail, were bailed out by the American taxpayers. And George Bush lied us into wars in the Middle East, right, with the weapons of mass destruction that turned out to be bogus. So Americans, sick and tired of the rigged system, sick and tired of not getting a pay raise in 50 years, bailing out the bankers, sending our jobs overseas, fighting these stupid foreign wars. And Donald Trump was speaking to the American people. And that's why he won in 2016.
But you've also been critical of the president in terms of his foreign policy, specifically as it relates to Syria. And you're saying, wait a minute. That's, I mean, I read Paul Mulshine's column. You can check out Paul at NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Mulshine wrote about you saying, hey, wait a minute, Donald Trump, that's not why I support it. I supported you to stay out of there. Well, did I have that wrong?
Well, no, I think he's done certainly a lot better. I mean, you look at the Obama administration.
Can we just deal with the Trump administration?
Well, I think that you have to contrast, though. You know, Obama destroyed Libya with the help of Hillary Clinton, and then we've destroyed Syria. And Donald Trump, the entire time, we had all the candidates on the Democrat side. Hillary Clinton said, hey, I want to shoot down Russian planes. We had the Republicans like Jeb Bush saying, how dare you attack my brother's foreign policy in the Middle East? This is keeping us safe. And Donald Trump said, that's a lot of bunk. Why are we destroying these countries in the Middle East? What are we getting out of it? So, yes, Donald Trump has, in my opinion, that the missile strikes into Syria before we got all the evidence. I think those chemical attacks with the white helmets, I think a lot of folks, a lot of reporters are showing that the white helmets don't really have clean hands, that they sort of do these events. And so Donald Trump is certainly much better than our previous presidents that were in love with starting all these wars in the Middle East.
To that point, we're talking to State Senator Michael Doherty, outspoken, thoughtful, provocative on so many levels. I enjoy talking to him. But I got to ask you something. You also serve this country.
Yes. Okay.
With distinction. Thank you for your service. We're doing this program right after Veterans Day. When the president says that, quote, he knows more than the generals, when the president says that we should no longer be engaged with NATO the way we are, when the president says what he does about foreign policy, and one more thing, his seemingly inability or unwillingness to be critical of Vladimir Putin, who, let's just say, is not rooting for us as Americans, I've got to believe on some level, even though you agree with the president on a lot of issues, you say, wait a minute, what's up here? No?
Well, what was the advice that President Eisenhower gave in January of 1961 going out the door? He said, here's a man who would spend his entire life in the military.
That's right.
Raised to the highest levels, right? Oversaw the World War II operation, then became president.
Did he say beware of the generals?
He said beware of the military industrial complex. And to a large extent, that's taken over our country. The Gulf of Tonkin that led to the increase of Vietnam participation, it ended up to be, it never happened.
And the Lyndon
in
Johnson
retrospect.
administration.
Yes, well, so we've seen this time and again in American history. So I think Donald Trump, hey, the generals were whispering in Lyndon Johnson's ear back in the 60s, hey, we were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin. We got to go in and set things straight. And it turned out we lost 58,000 men
right.
for what?
Beyond what you're saying, which has a lot of credibility, the inability and the unwillingness of the president to be critical of Vladimir Putin and Russia for, and I don't know what the Mueller investigation is going to find. That's not what I'm talking about. But meddling in our elections. Does it bother you that the president doesn't seem more exercised about that?
I think
because you respect our system of elections.
Well, absolutely. We have a constitution, and we put civilians in charge of our military. And so at the end of the day, the president is the commander in chief. But as a young man, when I was in my early 20s, stationed over in Germany at the height of the Cold War from 86 to 89, there was a real threat. It was called the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact was all the way up to the West German border. As a matter of fact, they built a wall to keep their people in.
That's
and
right.
I was actually at a nuclear artillery unit. So we spent a lot of time in the field, a lot of time at night. You're thinking about, are we going to do our job? We were going to do our job and nuke the Soviets if they invaded the West. All of that, Steve, has gone away. The Warsaw Pact has receded. It doesn't exist anymore. And we made commitments at the end of the Cold War, George Bush, that we were not going to advance NATO to the east.
So
we've
Russia's not our enemy anymore.
I think we should try to get along with Russia. Russia has a country that's the size of Italy in its GDP. And if you take a look at the map, where NATO and Warsaw Pact was at the height of the Cold War and where Russia is now, NATO has actually done the expansion.
Let me bring you back home real quick. Governor Murphy's economic policy, go ahead, describe it. Why are you smiling when I ask you that? Go ahead, describe it.
Because it's so loaded, I don't know where you're going.
Well, where do you think, okay, what do you think of the governor's policy to say we're the innovation state? Let's attract people who want to come here.
Well, I think technology is great, technological advancement. We were the home of the pharmaceutical industry, continue to be for a century, and I think it's great that we should be.
What would make us more competitive?
Having a better tax structure for companies. Time and again, they talk about the high regulatory burden of New Jersey, the unpredictability, and the high taxes. Everybody knows Quick Check. Quick Check's everywhere. It has great coffee. And in my hometown, they said it was so difficult just to get a Quick Check built with all the regulatory burden, whether they could hook up to the sewer system or build a septic system. They said it was the most expensive Quick Check they've built anywhere, and they doubt they're going to be building any more in the area. So this is what New Jersey state government does. It drives businesses away. They're just going to, right now, we're in western New Jersey.
A few seconds, go ahead.
So the Lehigh Valley, it's doing great. Why? Because they learned the lesson of the steel industry collapse, and now they welcome business. New Jersey could look at what the Lehigh Valley's doing and get those businesses coming here.
You've been listening to State Senator Michael Doherty, who's been serving in this legislature for how long?
Since 2002.
And I want to thank you for joining us on State of Affairs, and all the best.
Thank you, Steve.
Stay right there. I'm Steve Adubato. Let's continue the conversation. Listen, talk to us about what the senator just talked about. Write to me at Steve Adubato, and I promise you we'll see you next week.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by Georgian Court University, Englewood Health, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, New Jersey Resources, New Jersey Sharing Network, NJM Insurance Group, and by Adler Aphasia Center,